Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for August 30th, 2018. On today's episode, we're going to catch up on some emails in the mailbag and discuss the latest film and TV news. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me at today's podcast is Slash Film Weekend Editor Brad Oman.
Hey, that's me.
And writer Hoai-Tran Bui.
Hey, everyone.
Okay, before we get into the news, let's stop over by this bag of mail I have here, this digital bag of mail, to read a couple entries. Sam L. from Atlanta wrote in a letter, basically, the other day when we were talking about on the water cooler, I visited this Jim Henson exhibit. I kind of theorized that I would love for them to build a Jim Henson museum. Apparently one exists. I didn't know of it, but there's a Henson Museum. Sam L. From Atlanta informs me that it is located in Atlanta as part of the Center for Puppetry Arts. They have two museums. He says the Henson Museum has Muppets spanning from Sesame Street to the films to the Muppet Show. Fraggle Rock has a great collection. It's he says it's rather small, but they rotate different characters and displays regularly. So next time I'm in Atlanta, which I am there often now with set visits and stuff, I know the Hollywood shooting lot there, I will have to check this out. Michelly, a Slash Film Daily regular, writes in to tell me that I should keep talking about the Magic Castle at the water cooler, that I will never get enough of your tales. Well, thank you, Michelly. And she also included a shout out to HT, her favorite person, for reading and recommending sharp objects.
Thanks, Michelly. You're my favorite person, too.
And lastly, in the mailbag, we actually have a question that we're going to try to answer, and that is Colin from San Jose, California, writes in with the question, with Venom and the Joker movies coming out soon, what other villains do you think deserve their own movie? Now, Brad, I know you had some trouble with this question.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, like, I just find myself not all that interested in most villains without their hero that usually goes along with them. And that's not to say that villains aren't interesting characters, but I feel like it's difficult to follow a character whose sole purpose is pulling off, deeds and tasks and all these things that are generally considered evil enough for heroes to stop them. And that's not to say that there aren't villains that also aren't complex enough where their motivations are, not necessarily purely evil. But I find myself, I don't know.
But we're also not saying that you can't have the hero in the story. It's just the hero is not the protagonist of the story.
I know, for sure. But then I feel like, what's the point then? Like, if I'm not going to be fully vested in like the whatever the villain's trying to do, and I want the hero to stop him, then like I don't know. It doesn't just. Well, I just don't get fully engaged in the idea of a movie following the villain as the protagonist of the story.
So are you saying you don't have any suggestions for this question? Any answers?
No, I mean, the one that I thought would kind of be interesting just because it's recent and it leaves so much to the imagination, I guess, is that I'm kind of fascinated by the idea of what Red Skull was up to between Captain America, the first Avenger, and when he reappears in Avengers Infinity War. Simply because he talks about, trying to seek out, the Infinity Stones, and I think it would be kind of fascinating to see him, after he gets, sucked away by the Cosmic Cube, he ends up somewhere else in the galaxy and is trying to track down the Infinity Stones, and he's trying to do it before, some other villain who that was also trying to seek out the Infinity Stones does as well. Because Red Skull does mention that there were several other people who had tried to get the Infinity Stones and failed. So I think that might be interesting to see. But honestly, like, I feel like the villains that are most fascinating to me fall outside of the comic book realm. Like, I'd love to see a movie about Darth Maul. Obviously, they filled in some of the gaps about his character with Clone Wars and whatnot. But I think that there's, an interesting story to tell about that character in general. And I also always thought that the character of Bill the Butcher from Gangs of New York would make for an interesting origin story. I feel like finding out like what it was like for him, before he gets to the point where he's this big New York crime boss would have been really fascinating.
Well, the first person that came to my mind with this question was Lex Luthor. You say you wouldn't care about the antagonist if they became the protagonist in that story. What about I know we've talked about it in the past, but there's that whole Red Sun comic book miniseries that was released by DC, which basically, Superman landed in Russia instead of the U.S. and became kind of bad, and Lex Luthor was kind of like the good guy in this tale. He was trying to, rid the world of this evil Superman.
But then is he the villain at that point, though? He's the hero then.
I guess he is the hero, but okay, then just how about Luthor just as Luthor? There is this comic book miniseries that Jacob brought up in the Slack channel, and it's called Luthor Man of Steel. And it's a great miniseries that presents Lex as heroic and Superman as an alien menace that he truly thinks will doom the planet. And I don't think that necessarily means that Superman's the bad guy. I think you're seeing... I love films that take me out of my mindset and can present a different view of a character and ideology from the completely different side that I normally wouldn't agree with. And I think that's I think you could do that with Lex Luthor, and I also think you could do that with I was thinking about, I know there's a lot of Superman mythology, but maybe General Zod. I haven't watched that Krypton series. I've heard it's horrible, but maybe there is kind of an angle on, that whole Krypton and that his feud with Superman as told from, a general in the Krypton military. I think that could be cool. I'm not sure we'll ever get it. But another suggestion I was thinking about is I would like to see we're talking about Joker and having this kind of gangster tale in the DC universe. I'd love to see a gangster tale set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe with maybe Kingpin. I think would be a great way to tell Goodfellas or kind of Godfather-esque tale in the MCU. HT, did you have any ideas?
Yeah. Although funny thing is, I'm kind of on the same mindset of Brad in that I prefer to have my heroes as the center of the story and have the villains be their counterpart or their foils upon which they can bounce off of, because I really value being sympathetic to my protagonist. But having said that, my first choice would be Killmonger, because he's also the freshest in my mind, but because I think he's one of the greatest MCU villains, and I really enjoyed how sympathetic and how complex he was, and would be really interested in seeing his origin story and how he came to be so angry and sort of twisted in his mindset. Another one would be, this is based solely on the cinematic version of it, but Hela, just because I want to see Cate Blanchett just vamp around for 2 hours. That would be great.
I feel like she didn't get her due in that movie. I feel like it was kind of I wanted more.
Yeah, she had stuff to do, but I was so intrigued by her story and how she kind of was wronged in a sense. Her whole history and all her accomplishments were just hidden, and I was really interested in her character, and I would love to see more of her as well.
Well, maybe you could explore that in a Loki movie.
That's true.
In some way,
could do that in a Loki movie. I remember we were talking about this earlier, and Brad said, I feel like we've explored everything we've had to say about Loki in the MCU, and that's true to an extent, but I think that Tom Hiddleston is just so good in the role, and he's such a layered character that I wouldn't mind going to see a Loki movie, or alternatively, a young Loki movie. So young Loki in the comics is is part of the Young Avengers, and he's a really fun character because he's this basically 1,000 ages old god who's stuck in the body of a child, and it's really fun to see him kind of come to terms with that and have to deal with other people not taking him seriously. So I would really be interested in seeing that. I would also be interested in, perhaps on the DC side of things, seeing maybe a League of Assassins movie, either led by Ra's al Ghul or Talia al Ghul. Although we saw some of Talia's backstory in The Dark Knight Rises. I think she's a really interesting character, Raish as well. So that would be a really cool story, I think, to do as a movie.
Actually, it's funny that you mentioned young Loki, because that made me think of how it would be interesting to see sort of like a high school coming of age.
I would love that.
Where like Loki and Thor have this sibling rivalry, and that what makes me think that would be awesome is Taika actually, or I don't know if Taika revealed it or someone revealed that there was initially plans for a quick flashback in Thor Ragnarok where Thor was supposed to be like this chubby kind of kid, and Loki was going to be this really emo, like Hot Topic style kind of kid, and it was going to be a scene between them as kids. And so that would be kind of an interesting like way to do a Loki movie, where you kind of get an idea of who he is and like why he became to be the way he is.
Oh, for sure. I think that'd be a lot of fun, and someone like Taika could probably do something that pretty well. I was also thinking, like, this isn't necessarily something I would want to see, but I think maybe a Harley Quinn movie could work. I mean, they keep on trying to, combine her with other characters. Like, people want to see Harley Quinn. Why not just make a standalone Harley Quinn movie?
You know what I'd like in a Harley Quinn movie? A Harley Quinn Poison Ivy team up, because those were some of the best episodes of the Batman animated series, and I really love them sort of like Thelma and Louising around Gotham, and that would be a really fun take on Harley Quinn.
In another, I have not seen those episodes, so I need to like go back and rewatch some of that stuff. I also think, and I know this has been done and it was done horribly, but I think there is a good Catwoman prequel film to be done. I know. What do you guys think of that?
I actually really like that idea, especially if they make a really good one with a really good actress that could sort of wash out the sour taste of the Halle Berry Catwoman movie. But I would like it to have it tied to her origin and Batman. I think the problem with the Catwoman solo movie we got was that they tried to do their own story and make their own mythology, and end up being a really convoluted mess because of that. But if they tie it to Batman and Gotham and like have her be just like very much in her Batman mythology, then I think it could work really well. Yeah.
Brad, do you have any last suggestions?
I mean, don't make any more Spider-Man villain movies. Sony, if you're listening.
I'm sure they have a whole line of them leading up to their, Sinister Six that they're
drawing up their Sinister Six storyboards right now.
Yeah. HT, do you have any last suggestions?
Nope, that's it.
I don't know. I feel like the big problem when you try to make a movie spinoff starring a villain is usually the villains are compelling because they're so mysterious, and so you don't want to know the details. You don't want to have a prequel of that character. You don't want to know who Mike Myers is. You don't want to know who is behind the mask of Darth Vader, and I feel like many of them kind of ruin that.
Or it's that the villains so closely echo what the hero has gone through that you already kind of have an idea of what like they represent, what they stand for. They just went down a different path than the hero did, and so you understand where they're coming from already.
For sure. Do you think after Avengers 4 we could possibly get like an actual standalone Thanos movie of some kind? Like,
I sincerely doubt it.
You doubt it. I feel like there's such a fan base behind that villain at this point.
I mean, I wonder how much of it is based on sort of like the memes of his attractiveness. But I don't know if I'm interested in a Thanos movie. I was surprised by how much I connected to Thanos during Infinity War. So it's possible they could do one, but I don't know if they have like enough material now that he's basically gone through the most interesting parts of his storyline.
For sure. Okay, let's get to the news because we spent 15 minutes in the mailbag. Let's start off with this Fandango survey telling us what people's most anticipated movies of this fall is, and I call bullshit on this, Brad. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so Fandango did some kind of survey with their users to find out what the movies that are coming out this fall they're most excited to see, and honestly, like, I don't understand how this ended up on top. I mean, I to some extent I do, but it's kind of just perplexing to me that it ended up here. Apparently, the most anticipated movie, according to the Fandango users who filled out the survey, is Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald. Now, the Harry Potter fan base is huge, obviously, but one would think that the lukewarm reception to the first Fantastic Beasts movie would have been enough for people to maybe keep their hype and expectations in check. Granted, the trailers for the sequel do look much better than the first movie, and I guess, you know, there's the fact that hot, young, sexy Dumbledore being in the movie is probably making it a little bit more appealing. But that's just weird to me that that's the top thing. And then, like,
do you think the fact that Fandango is owned by Warner Brothers has anything to do with that? Or is that just a, you know? I'm floating conspiracy theories here.
It's a pretty bold accusation, Peter. No, I mean it's certainly possible, but the franchise, you know, of Harry Potter is huge, so it's, you know, it's easy to see why it's such a big thing. You know, it's one of those movies where people are very well aware of it. Families are excited to see it. It's something that everybody can go see. So, you know, the appeal is very broad when it comes to that kind of franchise. You know, and that's exactly why a movie like Ralph Breaks the Internet is also on the list. But I'm also surprised to see that Venom is apparently a very anticipated movie, even though I haven't heard anybody say, "Oh my gosh, Venom looks so good."
I've not heard one single person say anything other than a negative thing about Venom.
Seriously, and I mean, maybe the appeal of Tom Hardy is big. Maybe we're just like too up our own asses when it comes to like being on film Twitter and only listening to other people who are kind of like in our same circle and are big cinephiles. You know, maybe it's the fact that Venom hasn't been given his due diligence as far as a big screen presence. You know, maybe it's just curiosity more than anything. But what I do think is cool is that there's two movies on here that are kind of surprised me as being extremely anticipated. One of them is Bohemian Rhapsody, the biopic about Queen and Freddie Mercury, and I think that is mostly attributed to the fact that Queen's songs are, you know, just known so well around the world. And I think everyone is, you know, so excited just because the soundtrack gets them pumped, and, you know, this is a band that everyone can get behind, that everyone loves, and seeing their story play out on screen is going to be pretty cool. And then also A Star is Born made the top 5, which I think we can probably attribute to everybody loving Lady Gaga. I wouldn't have anticipated that a remake of a remake, you know, would have been on this list, but it just seems like the trailer is doing its job of getting people excited for the movie.
I go to the movies a lot now with my AMC A-list, and usually, you know, when I go into press screenings, you don't see the trailers before the press screening. So I'm sitting through a lot of screenings of trailers. I can't tell you how many times I've seen that trailer.
Oh yeah,
in the movies, and the reaction every single time from the audience is like they like fall in love with it.
Like, and I think one thing that's kind of fascinating for people too, and I kind of saw this firsthand, is that a lot of people don't even realize that's Lady Gaga until her name comes on screen, because she looks completely different without, you know, her big, you know, showy wardrobe and, you know, makeup for her concerts and that kind of thing. Because I even showed the trailer to my mom, and she was like, "Who is that?" And I was like, "You know who that is?" And she's like, "I don't think I do." And then she started singing, and it flashed her name, and she's like, "Oh wow!" And it's like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But Creed 2 not being on this list is the most egregious offense, guys. I mean, how is nobody excited about Creed 2? And at the very least, Halloween was at the top of the most anticipated horror movies list. But come on, like, how are we not more excited about Halloween and Creed 2 than Venom?
I guess this is, you know, shows you what people who'd still buy their tickets on Fandango, you know, what kind of movies they're interested in. I think if anything, this proves that you know, a Grindelwald standalone movie would do well with this audience.
Oh no!
Oh,
if they can only do it if they recast Colin Farrell, and that's it.
I don't think we need it at all, guys. But okay, let's move on. The first reviews for Alfonso Cuarón's next movie have hit the web. There's a roundup of it on the site. What do we know? Is it good?
It's very good, according to critics who saw it at the Venice Film Festival today. So this is Alfonso Cuarón's first movie since 2013's Gravity. So it's been 5 years since he's last directed a feature film. And Roma is, I think, is what he said, his most personal and intimate yet. So Todd McCarthy at The Hollywood Reporter calls Cuarón a poetic curator of memories and continues to praise the film, quote, blessed with an exceptionally acute sensitivity to the things of life, Roma is a memory film of unusual beauty that pushes to the foreground what is commonly left in the background. He continues like that, but everyone else, just carrying out the playlist, called it stunningly personal and ambitiously expansive and human. Other people have such high praise, very similarly. So Glennie Ken at RogerEbert.com says it's mesmerizingly beautiful. Despite being a black and white film, you would think that its cinematography would not be quite as praised, but everyone has so much praise for its visuals in addition to the very personal story.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm such a big fan of Alfonso Cuarón's films, and I'm so excited to see this. And since this is a film by Netflix, I was kind of disappointed that we might not get a chance to see this on the big screen. But apparently Netflix is planning a theatrical release for this and other awards contenders. Brad, what do we know?
Yeah, so it turns out that since Netflix has been pulling in some more prestigious filmmakers to churn out original movies for the streaming service, those filmmakers still want to see their work end up on the big screen and not just get the usual extremely small theatrical release that will qualify them for awards. They want to give, a good amount of audiences a chance to see these movies on the big screen. And so earlier this week, Netflix was said to be considering giving certain prestige movies like Roma from Alfonso Cuarón and 22 July from Paul Greengrass and The Ballad of Buster Scruggs from Joel and Ethan Coen their own theatrical release. Apparently, all those filmmakers have kind of made a push to have those movies be shown on in theaters, especially Roma, because that was actually shot on a very technologically advanced large format camera and basically made to be shown on the biggest screen possible. And so Netflix was considering this, and now apparently they've already decided to set theatrical dates for those movies. Turns out the Paul Greengrass's thriller 22 July, it will hit on October 10th. Ballad of Buster Scruggs is coming November 16th, and then Alfonso Cuarón's Roma will arrive on December 14th. Now, they're still not really getting a very large theatrical release, but it is a little bit larger than what Netflix would normally do for these kinds of movies. They'll run about the 22 July and Buster Scruggs will play for a week. Roma might play for 2 weeks, and they'll run in about 10 to 12 theaters in the larger city markets, mostly at landmark theaters, which you'll find, in New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, that kind of thing. So this is cool. But I still wish these movies would get a much wider release, because, you don't want to see a Coen Brothers movie or an Alfonso Cuarón movie for the first time, on TV. And granted, these are usually the kind of movies that a lot of general audiences don't see until they arrive on home video or until they get the right amount of Oscar buzz. But, I feel like giving people the opportunity to see these movies is, much better in the long run. And I think that there's a chance that could happen if Netflix ends up buying movie theaters like they're considering, and maybe they won't have to worry about paying to put the movie in theaters and deal with the exhibition process.
Well, I don't think that's really the huge problem with that. Is like Netflix has always been up for theatrically distributing their movies, but they want to do so on day and date with it being released in on their streaming service. They don't want to, have a theatrical window, and that's what a lot of these exhibitors are fighting against. I think these three movies that you mentioned, they have not yet announced when they're going to appear on the streaming service. So I'm wondering if these are actually to get them in theaters, if they actually had to agree to some kind of theatrical window.
And that's why I think it would be much better if Netflix actually ever did get their own theaters, because then they wouldn't have to worry about that.
For sure. Let's move on to our next story, and that is a bit of interesting casting. The guy that was cast as Charles Manson in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Quentin Tarantino's movie, is also going to be playing the same character in Mindhunter Season 2 for David Fincher. HT, what do we know?
Yeah, so this guy has found his niche. Damon Harriman, who has appeared in TV series such as Justified and Top of the Lake, has been cast in the Netflix serial killer series Mindhunter as Charles Manson, a role that he's already been cast as in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood from Quentin Tarantino. But according to the sources from Collider, Harriman was actually cast as Manson in Mindhunter first and had already filmed his scenes over the summer. And this will take place in a different time period, too, as the time period in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. In Mindhunter, it takes place in the 80s. So by that time, Manson will be in his late 40s, already behind bars. Whereas Once Upon a Time in Hollywood takes place, as we all know, in 1969 when he was still a free man and in power over his family, essentially. So we don't know how big a part Harriman will be playing in either of these, but I'm guessing he won't really have to, I don't know, shave or change his wigs or whatever is the case that he's doing for these films or TV series and film.
Yeah. I wonder how the permission or the order of getting cast, and like, did he have to go to Fincher and Netflix and be like, well, yeah, I'm already cast as this character in this movie. I don't know. It just seems like such a weird, I can't think of this ever happening before. And also I like to imagine that we now have a connected Quentin Tarantino, David Fincher cinematic universe in the making here. Right?
Actually, this isn't quite, this kind of double casting isn't quite unusual either. Because,
really?
Apparently, so as you know, Michael Sheen has played Tony Blair in 3 separate projects.
Yeah, that's true.
Apparently, Michael Keaton was played the same character in both Jackie Brown and Out of Sight. There have been several other like triple castings. Jerry Halliwell is an actor who's played Saddam Hussein in 6 different movies, apparently.
Wow, talk about some. I don't know, but what do you think about my idea for a connected David Fincher, Quentin Tarantino cinematic universe?
I love it.
You love it.
I think who is it who joked? But Brad Pitt could play the same character, or his character in he said Benjamin Button. The Curious Case of Benjamin Button is actually the prequel for his character in Inglourious Bastards.
But is the character in Seven related to that character in any way?
Oh,
it's like the
son.
son. I don't know. Quentin Tarantino's movies are already connected in a kind of cinematic universe, or at least a couple of them are, like Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs. Like, there's some characters that are related. I'm wondering
they all are. There's a whole thing like about how they're all connected.
Yeah, I wonder if anybody after this is going to somehow reimagine the universe to include the films of David Fincher. And if you do you include the girl with the dragon tattoo in there? I don't know. Anyways, let's move on to our last and final story. That is with MoviePass going down in flames, Sinemia is trying to lure customers away with a new $9.99 subscription plan. Brad, tell us about it.
Yes, Sinemia, here we go again. They are creating a new $9.99 a month plan that, just like MoviePass, will give you 3 movie tickets each month. It does have the restriction that you can't see any IMAX or 3D movies, just 2D movies. But what's great about this, aside from the fact that you're not paying MoviePass, is that you're able to choose your seats in advance. You're able to purchase tickets in advance. There's no blackout dates, and there's no surge pricing. So already that sounds infinitely better than MoviePass, which you're paying for 3 movie tickets, but you don't know if the movie you want to see is actually going to be available when you want to see it. You don't know when the service is going to go down. You don't know when MoviePass is going to change their mind and be like, surprise, we're just a cracker and jelly subscription service now. So it's pretty good when you consider, especially because right now Sinemia is having their summer sale, so they actually have discount prices on all of their subscriptions. The only downside with this is that you do have to, it's billed annually, so you do have to pay like $120 up front. But unlike MoviePass, it doesn't sound like Sinemia is going to be making changes to their service or screwing you over halfway through your annual subscription. So it should be a pretty good deal for anybody interested in doing that.
Yeah, I hear all the time when we're, recommending AMC A-List, I don't have an AMC theater near me. That's why I still have MoviePass, even though it's so crappy. This sounds like the perfect solution for those people. Like, I feel like if you see at least one movie a month, you're going to make your money's worth back, right? Because a movie ticket at least costs like $8 in like the smallest parts of the US, I would think. In LA it costs, upwards of like $15-16 for a 2D movie. So I think for $9.99, if you see 3 movies a month with the $9.99 subscription service, that sounds like a good deal. HT, I know you had been gifted one of those year-long MoviePass subscriptions. Mm-hmm. Did they translate that into a monthly subscription recently?
Not yet, but for now, I only have to pay extra if I go over the 3 movies a month. So It's the same for me, but if I go over 3 movies a month, then I have to pay, extra $5 per movie, I think. Which is not terrible. And I've actually considered, so I'm still kind of on the fence about AMC A-List because I'm one of those people who, while I have an AMC near me, it only really offers mostly major releases and big blockbusters. And my favorite theater is more indie theater that I go to all the time and is covered by MoviePass. So I was considering keeping both subscriptions on.
Oh, wow.
But then, I was wondering whether that would be worth it because I'd be paying like $30 a month essentially, and that would basically amount to 2 regular price movie tickets. So maybe it would be worth it.
I'm actually considering the same thing, and that's because every now and then I will go to a theater that is a little bit further away from me that is a part of a regional chain called Goodrich Quality Theaters, because they have an IMAX screen, and sometimes they will get indie releases before the AMC theaters that are closer to me. So I've actually been considering getting a Sinemia subscription in addition to my AMC stub list, because either way, the number of movies that I'm seeing, I'm still paying significantly less than I would if I were paying for all those movie tickets out of pocket.
Yeah. The tough thing with the AMC and their independent movies, like I have an AMC theater near me that, half the movies there are like indie movies. It's where I saw 8th Grade. It's where I saw the Mr. Rogers documentary. I saw 8th Grade there one week, and it was only there for a week before it got rotated out. So yeah, it's kind of exactly. Like when there's an indie movie playing at your local AMC theater, you have to see it that week, or risk never seeing it at any AMC theater in your 50 miles ever again. So yeah, I'm interested to hear what you guys out there, how you are dealing with the movie pass apocalypse, movie pass. I can't come up with a good name for this.
Movie passing away.
The what?
Movie passing away.
Movie passing away. Have you gone to A-List? Are you thinking about Sinemia, or are you just going back to the regular, just buying your own tickets with cold hard cash method of seeing movies? If you have anything interesting to say, send us a letter in the mailbag at peter@slashfilm.com. Brad, where can people find more of your work online?
slashfilm.com. You can find me writing about movies and TV there. You can also check out Twitter at Ethan_Anderton, and my own podcast, Go Flix Yourself, available on iTunes and some other places where podcasts are downloaded.
HT, where can we find you?
You can also find me every day at slashfilm.com, and I'm on Twitter at hehe.
And you can find me on all social media at /film. You can find this podcast published every weekday on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, Spotify, and our home of /film.com. As I said, you can send feedback, questions, comments, concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com, and we might read them on the air, so leave your name and general geographic location in case we do. And please go rate and read this podcast on iTunes. Tell your friends, spread the word. We'll see you tomorrow. It's good. We're good, guys.
Okay, I thought for a second you're like, my recorder didn't record anything.
That has not happened once in a year yet.
Okay, yes,
it's bound to
that's true.
happen though. I mean, we
Knock on
record
wood.
how many episodes do you think we've done in this past year? I actually don't know this number.
Oh my God.
10,000.
See
Don't
on
we?
iTunes.
Haven't we numbered them?
No, we have 305 episodes of this podcast, guys.
Oh.
That's
Wow.
insane.
Wow.
I'm surprised we haven't numbered them.
We started with numbers, and then our readers told us that, or our listeners told us that the numbers were not helpful, and just they want to know what's on the podcast.
Oh,
Actually,
well.
we started with numbers, and then we went to the date number, or the date,
Oh.
and then people were like, "We don't care about the date. We want to know what's on the podcast."
Oh my gosh, it's so hard to read the numbers on the title of the podcast.
Well, I think it's they're scrolling down, like on iTunes, and like your screen on your phone is like there's limited
It's
view.
pretty
You
small.
want to,
That's true.
you want to see what we're talking about. Anyways, well, thank you guys.
All right. See you.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.